The books of the Bible gain their names in the most arbitrary way. In English, or Latin actually, the name was chosen based on the first story in each book. So the first book begins with the creation of the world. It's called Genesis. And the second book, which is talking about the Exodus from Egypt, is, after all, Exodus. And the third book, which is the message to the priesthood, is called Leviticus, for the Levites. And the fourth book we're reading today begins with a census, so it's called Numbers. And the fifth book is called Deuteronomy, which is a repetition of everything that came before. But in Hebrew, in the Jewish tradition, the books gained their names in an even more arbitrary way. They simply took the first big word in the first sentence. So the first word in the first book is Breshit, in the beginning. But what's ironic is, though, even though they took the name in that very, very arbitrary way, the names fit the content of the book. The first book is called Breshit, in the beginning, and that's what the book is about: the beginning of the world, the beginning of humanity, the beginning of our people, and the foundational ideas, the foundational values that create the Jewish faith. The second book is called Shemot, which means names, because it begins with a list of the names of Jacob's children who came to Egypt. But even though it's just Shemot because of the names, it's a book about identity. It's a book about the two events that seal the identity of this people: the Exodus from Egypt and the revelation at Mount Sinai. The third book is called Vayikra, God called, and the book is about a call to become a holy people. The book that we're reading is called Bamidbar, in the wilderness, because the first line is, this is what happened in the wilderness of Sinai. The book takes place in the wilderness. It's our journey from the Mount Sinai to the Promised Land. But it's more than a physical wilderness. This book is about a social wilderness. This book is a portrait, and rather painful portrait, of the dark sides of the human soul. This is a guided tour through all the brokenness of human communities. It is a book in which leaders lead, but no one follows. Prophets preach, but no one listens. There is no common language, no common direction, no common values. It is a book of social disintegration. And it all falls on Moses, the leader. Moses, who never wanted this gig to begin with, who was very happy taking care of the sheep of his father-in-law. But sheep are different than Jews. Sheep do what you tell them to do. And the book is one chapter after another, one painful chapter after another. We spent 2 years and 2 months at Mount Sinai listening to the Word of God. 2 years and 2 months at Mount Sinai absorbing divine truth. 2 years and 2 months at Mount Sinai absorbing, integrating a vision of a holy community, of a sacred people, of a moral character. And the first thing that happens, we read it 2 weeks ago on chapter 11 of this book. Ironically, it's chapter 11, moral bankruptcy. Because the first thing that happens is that as soon as we leave Mount Sinai, the people begin to kvetch. They begin to complain. Moses gave them divine truth. What do they want? Hamburgers, steak, chops, ketchup. They begin to complain about the food. All they have is this miracle food called manna, which tastes like anything you want it to taste like. But that's not good enough. We want what we ate in Egypt. And the complaint is tinged with this awful nostalgia. Gone from memory are the shackles and whips of slavery. Gone from memory are the children thrown into the Nile or the elders crushed under Pharaoh's projects. No, 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 no. What we remember about Egypt was the midnight buffet. Every night, a chocolate fountain and petit fours. Do you remember? Do you remember? It was so wonderful. And the word that's included in the text is lechinam, and it was all free. You didn't have to pay for anything. Boy, wasn't Egypt a lovely place? And Moses absorbs this, and you can see him shrink. You can see his soul begin to shrink. And then in the chapter we read last week, the journey ends. Last week, the journey ended. We arrived in the Promised Land. We're right at the border of the Promised Land. Moses is told, send 12 spies to see the land. He chooses the 12 most prominent leaders of the community, sends them into the land. They come back and they say, it is everything we dreamed of. It is a land of milk and honey. It is a land of beautiful hills and beautiful valleys and wonderful cities. It is a land of fruit beyond imagination. But it'll never be ours. Because the people who live there, they are giants. And we are chagavim. We are grasshoppers. We are bugs. We are worms. That's how we felt in their presence, and that's how we must have looked to them. Here you have everything you always dreamed of, one step away, and you don't want it anymore because you're afraid, because your fear takes over, and you can't take that one step toward the dream that you have held all your life. And Moses, he shrinks a little bit more. And this week, the story that Adam's going to read for us is a rebellion. Vayikach Korach. Korach, who is Moses' cousin, gathers up a community of rebels, the two leaders of the tribe of Reuben and 250 elders, and they stand up to Moses and said, who died and made you king? And Moses, again, who never wanted this, who was forced into this gig by God, he has to defend his own authority. He has to defend his authority. And there's this rebellion. And next week, if last week his people betrayed him, and this week his tribe betrayed him, next week his family will betray him, his brother and sister will speak ill of his wife. This never happens in our Jewish families, but once upon a time, sisters-in-law, and they will speak ill of his wife, and then finally, God will betray him. The people are thirsty. There is no water. And so God tells him, go to the rock and take your staff, but talk to the rock. But Moses loses it. He's just lost his sister. She just died. And he's in Shiva, and he's in pain, and the people are kvetching, and the sun is hot, and the world is impossible, and he just loses it, and he smacks the rock. And God says, because you didn't believe me, you're not going to go into the land. You will not see the dream. Maybe your children will, but you won't. He doesn't speak to the rock as he was told. But of course he doesn't speak to the rock, because nowhere in this book do words work. Nowhere in this whole book are words effective in communicating to anyone and gathering us together. It is a world without common language, without common direction, without common values, without common visions. It is complete social disintegration. And at the end of the book, we arrive. At the end of the book, we arrive at the boundaries of the Promised Land, but we arrive exhausted and broken and disunified. A broken people. And if that were the end of the Torah, we would be a very different people. And our faith would be a very different faith. But then you turn the page, and there's another book that follows this one. And that book is called Devarim, which means words. Devarim is a completely different atmosphere. In Devarim, Moses speaks and people listen. Moses teaches, people learn. Moses leads and people follow. In Dvarim, there is solidarity. There is social cohesion. The most important phrase in Dvarim, you all know this, is Shema Yisrael. Listen, Israel. And people listen. And they listen. And they learn. And they grow. It is a book of cohesion, of solidarity, of common purpose and common values and common language. And that is what the Torah is trying to teach. In every society, and in particular societies that value freedom, there's going to be a rhythm, an oscillation between moments of social disintegration, disunity, and chaos, and moments of social solidarity and leadership, moments when we get along and can do things together and agree with one another. This is what it means to live in a society that's free. I mean, we're going to read today, Adam's going to read for us in a moment, the story of Korach. So Korach and and Datan and Abiram and 250 elders rise up against Moses. Here's what's ironic. They didn't rise up against Pharaoh. Pharaoh enslaved them. They didn't say a thing. Pharaoh threw their children into the Nile. They didn't say a thing. Pharaoh humiliated this people and oppressed this people and destroyed this people, and they didn't say a thing. Why all of a sudden do they have the chutzpah and the courage to stand up against a leader? Because Moses gave them a taste of freedom. And that's what it means to have freedom. But the paradox of freedom that the Torah wants you to know is that once you enable people to think about being free, it's going to be very difficult to impose authority upon them. How do you gather them into a community? And how do you have social coherence in such a community? This was, because July 4th is a few weeks away, and it's an important July 4th, this was the great problem that our ancestors in this country faced. You had 13 disparate colonies. You tried to gather them into one unified country. But once you told them, once you've signed a Declaration of Independence, how do you get them to work together to create a country? How do you create the United States of America? And the answer is, you start with words. You start with words. It's a wonderful book by the author Walter Isaacson called The Greatest Sentence Ever Written. And it's a sentence that we should be teaching our kids. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are the words that founded this country and enabled us to become a coherent society. Because once you have devarim, once you have words, then you can figure out everything else. And this is also the Torah's promise. In every society that values freedom, there are going to be moments of social disintegration, social chaos, social craziness, political craziness. But if you hang on, as Moses hung on, if you hang on to the words that matter, if you hang on to the values that founded the society, if you can go back to first principles, truths that are self-evident, and hold them tight, you will go from Bamidbar, the social wilderness, to Devarim, to a world of listening, and a world of common purpose, and a world of common values, and a world of common direction. That is the Torah's faith. The great gift of this story is that Moses never gives up. Even when God takes away from him the promise of the promised land, Moses moves forward. Because by then he had absorbed those words, and he knew the words, and he knew what he was doing this for, and nothing else mattered. And if you read the newspaper this morning, and listen to the news this morning, and feel a little bit of uneasiness about the craziness of the world, then go back and read the first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. Go read the first paragraphs of this Torah portion, and remember the words upon which our common directions are founded. If we hold on, as Moses held on, we will move from Bamidbar into Devarim. But first, we have to go back to the Midbar, back to the rebellion, back to the chaos, in order to understand how we move forward. And Adam's going to take us there. Page 860 in your Chumash.